the Love You Miss You Bye podcast. Let's inspire each other. In my situation, I went out with my friend, and we went over to this guy's house, and it was like a party, more or less. And there was drinking, and there was smoking, and there was things going around. Nothing that was really out of the norm for a party that you're going to, at 20. No, maybe I was 19. Anyway, so I'm at this party. It wasn't abnormal, but the way I was feeling was abnormal. I was so gone that I couldn't even really move my body. It felt really, really heavy. And my friend ended up leaving because she liked a guy, and she was out of there and left me there, and ended up staying there. And, it was a situation of a lot of no's and a lot of not listening, and a lot of regret on my part because I allowed myself to get there. And in the last episode, one thing I did want to pull out was I don't drink a lot out. I'm more comfortable drinking in my own home, and I'm more comfortable I'm more relaxed. I feel safer. And I think it all stems from that. So I've always been the designated driver after that. And I kind of was before that. This just enhanced something that was already there and validated any feelings of not feeling safe and feeling out of control sometimes. I don't like feeling like that. So I don't know. I hope I'm explaining that right.
You are.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm more the square in the group, and it's not because I necessarily want to be. It's a self-protecting type thing. And I think it's done me well because it's kept me out of a lot of trouble that I probably would have been in because, who doesn't like to party and have a good time?
Right.
I just have that safety mechanism that kicks in. And I think I've kind of passed that on to my kids a little bit because I'm an example to them for that. And they notice it. So if I have one drink and we're at a restaurant, I'm just talking like a drink, like a margarita, whatever, they look at me because it's outside the norm. And they look like, are you going to be okay to drive? Like they always, they hyper, it's obviously, yes, I'm okay to drive. It's one, but that's good. I would rather them question me and make sure I'm okay, because that means they're going to question themselves, and that means they're going to question their friends. And I'm down with that. So I'd rather be a little bit overboard on that situation. But we were also walking into more of your conversation at the time of the cutoff. And I'm trying to remember, you had gotten date raped by a clean cut, white bread type guy. And,
that's where we were, huh?
Yeah, that's where we were. We were deep in.
And I know at the time I wasn't going to go into much detail, but it's actually good. We had some time in between the episodes because I listened to it and I was able to notice things that I was just glossing over, like you said. And I feel like that's where people are going to really
connect.
That's where I wasn't going to say much about that, but now I'm like, no, I should, because I think it's relatable for a lot of women. Your situation, you were drinking and, someone took advantage of you in the most major way. They're, total breach of trust, just like that's rape. And for women, it's so hard for us to say whether it's rape or not, because we kind of blame it on ourselves. Like you even said, I was upset with myself for even getting into that situation, but that doesn't mean it's your fault. And that's kind of what we as women do a lot of times, where it's like, when you think of rape, it's like, oh, it's a stranger you don't know, and he's holding you down and he's forcing you and you're screaming. And then that's what rape looks like. That's what a lot of people think. And that's not what it usually is. It's usually more subtle, like what you went through or like what I went through. And so that's why it's like, I should talk about it. But,
good point. Because you play it down. Like I'm playing it down. We both literally wanted to refilm it because I felt like maybe I played it up too much. And I'm like, but wait, it really is. It happened.
Yeah.
I said no.
You said no. And you weren't even if you said yes, you weren't in a place to say that, but you said no. You still had the cognition to say no, and they, took advantage of the fact that you couldn't fight back at that time. Probably you were too drunk. You were probably going in and out of consciousness at that point.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So, and then you don't drink often, so it hit you. And for me, it was similar. It was a very gray thing. And, we talked about it because you said you had a chance, you ended up confronting your rapist, right? Like, tell me what,
Yes.
you didn't
Oh
go into
yeah.
that.
I didn't. Okay. Yeah. I forgot. That's the most
Because
important
that's
part of the
also a
story.
difference in our stories. And I want to hear
Yeah.
yours, and then I'll kind of go through what happened with mine.
Okay. So I left there. I never saw him again. I never talked to him again. I never thought of him again. It was
Hmm.
gone. And then randomly, I started dating this guy, and he was friends with that guy.
Oh,
So I'm over there, and he's mentioning this name, and I know this name. And I'm like, what? Hold on. You know him? And he told me, yeah, he's one of my best friends. I know. And I'm like, okay, well, he raped me. And that's the first time I ever verbalized it. Like it was here, but it was never there.
yeah.
And he's like, what? And I'm like, wait, let me rethink what I just said. Yeah, I'm accusing somebody of something. I need to be sure no. I repeated the words again. I said, he raped me. And he was like, well, let's go talk to him, shall we? He's like, I want to hear what happened. I'm like, okay, let's go. So we went there, and he introduces us, and he's like, and I go, oh, I think he remembers me. And I was like, yeah, you raped me. And of course, he started to fight that conversation. I did not. What are you talking about? I did not. I said, well, let's replay the whole thing back. And I start talking through the whole thing. I said, I couldn't move. I said, no. And you didn't stop. And he couldn't fight me. He wasn't able to come up with any excuse why I was wrong and he was right. So he just basically acknowledged that he didn't see it that way at the time, and he is sorry that it came out and came across and that all that happened. And
Wow.
I guess I accepted his apology. I will never, and I told him that, I said, I'm never going to forget this. We're not friends. I just
Yeah.
needed to tell you how I felt. It's more for me than it is for you. Now you can live with the fact that you did that.
Wow.
And yeah, and that was it.
Have you ever
But I,
seen him again or anything?
No, but I heard about him through, because okay, so the guy was Cash, and I've known Cash since I was 20, and we still text and talk now. And so I would hear little things about how he was doing, and he never went on to do anything great. He's kind of a loser, actually. Hey, karma's a bitch, man. I could tell he genuinely felt badly for whatever that's worth. I really could. Like, holy shit.
Hmm.
Because I think he was just as wasted. And I'm not giving him excuses. I'm the type of person that wants to see both sides of a story, you know? And he didn't fight me on it, which gave sincerity to what he was saying. Not that it's right. So I don't want people to take it the wrong way, like I'm validating him doing that. I'm just trying to understand it. I feel like I learned in that situation, and I'm glad I got a chance to do that. And as you were saying, you didn't get that. Do you think that would have changed anything for you had you had that
No,
moment? Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
so. No,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe if I explain. So what happened was, it was a guy I'd been dating, and we'd had a couple dates, and I stayed the night with him after one of these dates, and we did have sex that night. After that night we did. Next morning, I get up to leave, and he wanted to again, and we didn't have condoms, and so I was like, no, I don't want to. And that is what happened, is that it turned into, no, I'm serious, and him like, oh yeah, you do. And it, like, he made it playful at first, and so I'm like, no, really. And then the next thing, like, he's wrestling me on the bed, but he's still acting like it's playful, and I'm like, no, seriously, no, I don't want to. And I'm like wrestling him back. I'm still not screaming or doing any of that classic things you think you're supposed to do, though. And he ended up like ripping the buttons off my pants. I remember like ripping my pants, like ripping the button off, and like got my pants off and spread my legs apart. All in just like this wrestling. It's all in the name of wrestling, even though I'm saying no and I'm saying stop. Like, no, I gotta go. Please let me go. Please, And then when he got to the point of like ripping my pants off, and see, and I think this is a difference in me and what I've been through in my past, where I didn't keep fighting at that point. Once he got my pants off, it was like I just shut down. Like, yeah, it's gonna happen, because that's, it was like I haven't always had like to where my body's my own, and I haven't always had a boundary, or I guess is what the word, like,
Yes.
I didn't realize that I could still keep fighting. Like, I just shut down and went somewhere else, like how that's what I did when I was a kid. Like, I just shut down and kind of let it happen at that point, because fighting wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my escape. That was my defense mechanism, was just shut down and get it over with. And so I didn't really realize I was raped at the time. Like like when it happened, I just got dressed and left really quick. Like I want nothing to do with them, and I just left. And I was thoroughly freaked out. And I was young. I was only like 22. And I'd had so much sexual trauma already. It's like I didn't. And so I just left and felt horrible and dirty and like just all the icky things. And I was really bothered. And like I said, at the time, I still had my guy, my ex, my high school sweetheart guy that was here, and we were, always on and off. And his cousin came over. I know him. I remember him and his cousin came over a couple of days later, and she just knew I was off, like something. I was upset, she could tell, and she just kept saying, "Phoebe, what is going on? What is up with you?" And I finally told her, because I was like, I was upset and I hadn't talked to anyone about it. And she's like asking me what is going on, and I trusted her enough to tell her, and she was just like, "Phoebe, you're raped." And I'm like, "Well, no, like, no." She's like, "Yeah, you were." And I'm like, "Well," it was like I had to think, like, I guess I was. Like, I could say no. I did say no, and he didn't listen. And so it was very gray for me. And so now, like I said, now that I'm an adult, I'm like, oh, that's what that was 100%. Like, I just didn't, just because I didn't keep fighting and I stopped fighting at a point doesn't mean I gave in, or like I wanted to. I still didn't. I just, fighting wasn't working. And
I stopped fighting too, Phoebe. So
yeah.
that's why saying it for the first time was very, very real, because I'm like, I'm about to accuse somebody of something. And I kept doubting myself. I'm like, no, I was very clear many, many times. No. And just wasn't listening. So I think that, I mean, no means no.
No is no.
I'm not, I know I'm making it sound like it was an easy confrontation when I saw this guy. It wasn't. Like, I
know it wasn't.
Really nervous.
I mean, it says a lot about you and your character that you knew and you felt. I mean, I think it's about like what I was talking about, that validation. Like when you mentioned, when you were a kid and you were molested and your parents validated you and said, "This was not right, Christy, and what do you want to do? We'll stand up for you." And when it was just like, just move on with life. Like, just figure out how to keep getting by. And so that was how I handled it. And it's just like thinking about the different ways people handle things and how for survivors, it's just like, I'm sure there's going to be people that hear this and some went one way and some went the other. And we're both here to like, we're the two different examples. And after that, I did start developing boundaries that kind of let me know, like, I can have boundaries, and I did get more, this is my body and I can say no. So it did help me with that a little bit. Just this week, I was looking for a photograph, and I got my old trunk out, which has like all kinds of old stuff, like your old school stuff, pictures your parents saved for you or whatever, those types of things, just old things. And I found a box of cards, like, and I was just kind of sorting through it really quickly because I was looking for the specific picture that I just can't find. It was driving me nuts. And when I was flipping through that, the bottom one was like it was an envelope, it was a card, I could tell, and I looked at the address, like, it just popped out at it was the bottom of the stack. And when I looked at it, it was to my mom when she was in treatment, and the return address, like, it was my handwriting as a kid. And so I'm like, oh shit, this was when one of her first trips to treatment. And I opened the card, and I just, after reading it, of course, I just started bawling. And I honestly was like, this is probably something, like, this is stuff I should talk about, because again, I glossed over and made it sound like, oh, my mom got clean. And it was like, not that simple, just like what you were saying, like confronting him. You say it in an easy manner. It wasn't easy. And again, these are the details that are going to mean something to somebody, probably, because, it just was a lifelong disease. And even though now she's been clean, like I said, this was her 40th year. It didn't just, like, she got clean back when I was a kid, and then that was that. And that's, what you kind of hear, and that's how I make the story sound. But, like, I remember how hard it was still with her getting clean when I was a child. And then after that, it just was like a pattern of, she'd get close to relapse again, or she'd get close to suicide, and she'd end up in treatment again. And that was part of what happened after. Like, that was where it just continued when I was a kid, and we didn't go into that. And I really was thinking I should rewind a little and talk about
you got to tell us what the letter, you read.
I was writing her card, like I said, "Dear Mom." And at the time, mind you, she's in treatment. That's at least 30 days, 30 to 60 days. I'm I'm in elementary school, and my oldest sister is maybe 19. She had a kid at this point. She got pregnant young and had a kid at 17. So she probably was, 18, 19, and she's the one that's just having to take care of me and my other sister while my mom's in treatment, which that's kind of a big load, so it's
A
like
lot. It's a lot.
more of her having to be a mom. So it was me writing her just saying like, I'm probably going to cry again. Like, Mom, I was so happy seeing you last weekend. I can't wait to come visit again. The thing that got me though, because I just said, when you come home, do you think we could go for more walks and talk? Like, could we go for walks and talk more often? That's what I asked in the letter. It was not like, for my son, if I was gone to work for a couple of days, he's going to write me a letter and be like, when you get home, could you buy me a Fortnite game? Kids now. But it was just like the simple, like, all I wanted, like, when you get back home, can we just go for a walk and talk more? Like, again, that just, can I have a little bit more of your attention when you get home? And it was hard to read it because I was like, fuck, that is what I was, Caleb's age right now, literally right now. That's, if I hadn't have got it together the way I did, it could be Caleb writing a letter like that to me, and that just would break my heart to think of him doing it. And now that I can put it in perspective like that, it breaks my heart even for me, as you talk about your inner child, like, it breaks my heart.
You just wanted your mom, you just wanted time, real time,
but it was just like, I can't wait. Hopefully I can come visit you again soon. And when you get home, that was the sentence that was like, oh, that was like a gut punch. Like, oh God, yeah, that was all I wanted back then. And the treatment thing would, like I said, it was a cycle. She went away quite often, even as an adult, she would have to go away again. It was just like, she'd have to do that to keep herself sane and to keep herself clean. And, so it was almost like taking care of herself was still what kept her away from us, even, once she started doing that. So did
you have any letters from her? Were you able to see any kind of return?
No, I couldn't find any, but my mom was always, when she was home, she was always good about leaving me nice, like, notes and cards. She would always write me notes. She'd do that a lot. And, especially once she got out of college and started being a counselor herself, and, further along in her recovery, she would do her best. She'd leave me notes about how lovable I was. It was like she knew what to say to me, but by then I was just so damaged that,
you weren't really receptive.
No, or it was just like, yeah, I didn't. I was already the way I was, so it was helpful from her, but it was still,
yeah, that's.
No. But the other things I saw too was letters from my dad, and that was something that, I kind of left off in the last podcast. Like, yeah, they got a divorce, and once we moved, I didn't really see him, which that was true. Once we moved, I never saw him. When we moved to the town that was 30 miles away, that was far too far for him to visit.
Wow. That's how far, like, it's like my dad is right now.
I know. That's where we moved. It was like 30 minutes away. And back then it was so far, but now I'm like, fucker, we were 30 miles away. But even though I never saw him, he was still, he'd come every now and then. He'd want to get me for spring break, or, maybe a couple of days in the summer. And my mom would make me come, like, go, even though she knew the history there. Because she didn't want him to ever be able to say, like, that my mom was at fault, or she just was like, I don't want to, I'm going to let him be a dad as much as he wants to be a dad, kind of, I guess. And I have all kinds of cards and letters from him that he would write me and send me after the divorce. Sounds nice, right? The fucking cards, like, now as an adult, again, reading them, they are heartbreaking for it. They'd be, it's just like, I see now, like, why. So he would write cards, and it would always just be like, I love you so much, honey. I wish you'd come see me. Hopefully your mom will let you come see me, or you'll come see me. It's like, bro, you're a fucking adult. How are you writing to your child saying, I hope you come see me? Like, it was my fault. I'm 7. How the fuck am I going to come see you? So yeah, it was like, I still have those letters and cards. And I do remember some of the times I'd go stay with them. I remember once, but let me rewind, because I remember one of the trips that I went, and I found out he was abusing the other lady's daughter, because I was asleep in the living room. Like, I was sleeping in the living room, and I woke up and saw him coming out of her bedroom and going back into his girlfriend's room. But again, I am a child, and I just lay there, like, frozen, like, please don't come in here. And but the lady, she did find out eventually, she found out and she did leave him. And it was
She
crazy
did leave him.
because she did live. Yeah, she left
Okay.
him. She left him. She didn't press charges, but she left him. And now that girl, I know her, she's like strung out. And I mean, it's just sad because it's like, I don't know if that was why. I don't know. You never know what plays into things, but it's just sad that, and I know that, and so that
He played a
happened.
part in her story too.
Yeah, basically. And then he ended up marrying another lady and she had a daughter. And
do you think he targeted that?
I don't,
You know what I mean?
He ended up marrying this next lady. And I remember this was the last visit I had. It was when I was in 6th grade. I went and spent spring break with him. And he was just like a dick to me. He was also mean to me. It was something he was really mean to me just in general. I'd be on the phone to him and I would be half listening to him because of what he was saying. Like, and I just remember he called me and he was drunk. Him and my uncle were together and they decided to call me. And so I remember I'm like writing on a piece of paper, just kind of like doodling to like kind of zone him out a little bit, but still listening and talking. And I remember writing like drunk as a skunk on the paper because he was drunk. And my mom came in and she saw that and she's like, your dad's drunk. You're talking to him drunk right now? He's drunk right now? Like, she was pissed because she's clean at this point,
Yeah.
She's been off drugs for several years. She got pissed and she grabbed the phone. And it was like, as soon as she grabbed the phone from me, I just started bawling because I had been holding it in basically, like sitting on the phone. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm just, I'm not paying attention. And as soon as she grabbed the phone, I just start bawling. And my mom like started yelling at him, like just, cussing him out or whatever. And then the next thing I know, his wife got on the phone. I know that, like, somehow, I'm not going to say her name, but somehow she ended up on the phone. And I just remember my mom yelling at her and saying, check your daughter, check your fucking daughter. Like, check your daughter. I remember my mom yelling over and over, yelling in the phone, check your daughter, check your daughter. Don't fucking yell at me. Check your daughter. Ask your daughter. And I was just like, and then hung up. Good. And she was like, Phoebe, you don't ever have to go see him again. Like, I don't care. It's up to you. Like, I never went and stayed with him again. I saw my dad, I remember once in like the parking lot of a grocery store and I like ducked like, oh fuck, I don't want to see him. I don't want to talk to him. Like my stepsister would reach out to me every now and then and say like, you really need to call him. He's changed. Like he's different. He's not drinking as much. You guys should really try to work on things. And so that would prompt me too, to be like, all right. And so, I might call and we might have a couple conversations and that, it was usually fizzle out pretty quickly because he wasn't going to put forth a lot of effort. There's more to this, of course. So this whole episode is going to turn into my dad.
That's obviously where the heart is.
For sure. I had a good friend I went to school with. And I was up visiting one weekend and we were talking about, so basically her husband was good friends with my stepsister's ex-husband. They weren't married anymore.
All right, stop. Let me okay. This friend, how old are you and this friend at this point? You're talking?
Like early 30s.
Okay. So this is fairly in the adulthood.
Oh, this was in adulthood. This was after all those incidents. I was done. I'm in a better place. Your friend is what? How's she connected? My friend and her husband's, like I went to school with both of them.
Uh-huh.
And then her husband, who, like I said, I know him too. He is best friends with my stepsister's ex-husband.
Wow. That's a connection.
So my stepsister, him and my stepsister had kids. They had 2 kids together. They had a girl and a boy. And I would see pictures of them on Facebook and I would always wonder and worry about my dad with the kid.
Okay.
So you see where I'm going.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So they were talking about like them getting a divorce and he's having a hard time with, the kids. And I'm like, man, I'm just going to say this. I was like, cause I saw pictures of them on Facebook. Like it was a picture I saw of my dad with those 2 kids, the grandkid, he considered them his grandkids, even though they weren't, I saw a picture of them together. And I remember it just made my stomach turn like, and also cause the little girl looked, she was just a little chubby brown haired girl. And it just made me sick when I saw the picture of them. And so my friend is talking about them getting the divorce and him having the kids. And I was like, look, I'm just going to say this. I said, you do what, I just have to get this off my chest. I said, but doesn't need to have those kids around him anymore. I'm just going to say, I'm like, this is what happened. And I basically laid it out and told her, like, my dad is Chester's child molester. Like, he's a fucking Chester. Like, do with it what you will. Because she's like, well, can I tell him? And I'm like, I care. Tell him. I don't care. Because she's like, can I tell him like juice? Like, ooh, fuck that. Yeah, tell him.
Yeah,
Tell
him.
him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. And he said something, but then it turned into like, oh, Phoebe's lying. Phoebe was lying. That never
Well,
happened.
of course. What else is he going to say? Oh, caught. I did it. No.
Yeah. So.
And then what happened?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
So that just officially like, I don't know what happened with them. They said he was lying. That was that. Fast forward to a couple years later. My dad is dying. He has cancer. My stepsister's not reached out and told me nothing, but his old friends have reached out to me now on Facebook and said like, hey, David, your dad, he's in the hospital. He's sick. He's going to be dying soon. You should probably, reach out to him. And I'm pregnant with my son. And so I'm 35. And I'm like, okay, I'm still, all the shit we've been through, I'm still like, okay, I'll give him, let me call. Like, yeah, my dad's dying. It is my dad. Once again, that's the only dad I have. I'll call.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have regrets. Let me call. His fucking stepmom answers. And I say, hey, I'm trying, hi, this is Phoebe. Can I talk to my dad? He can't talk right now. Okay, well, can you let him know I called? Yeah, I'll let him know. Do you think I ever heard, like, that was that? Never heard nothing again. Like, she wouldn't give him the phone. Like, I think I called again, maybe. I know she wouldn't give him the phone.
Do you think she was mad because she heard about that conversation?
Yeah. So I didn't connect it at the time, but I later was like, that's what it was. So I had just had my son. He was 3 weeks old. My dad did pass. I had a C-section. My kid's 3 weeks. I'm like, I'm not driving 6 hours to go to this funeral. At this point, my aunt's even reaching out to me, which I never had a relationship with them, but she's also like, trying to be a decent person. And she sent me the obituaries and she had told me this was going to happen. But a fucking bitch stepmom did not put me in the obituary. Didn't even put me in the fucking obituary. I was his only biological child. My son was his only grandchild. And all she put was her daughter and her kids, those kids. My aunt made an obituary in a different paper and put me. And so she sent me both copies.
Your aunt being his sister.
Yeah, his sister. Yeah.
Well, that says a lot too.
So
she saw you as his daughter.
It did.
So. The irony here is the whole point of this whole thing was to talk about the medication.
I know. We're just talking now.
No, now it's just like conversation.
My life is interesting.
It's very interesting. It's super interesting.
My sisters had now decided to move to Dallas too. And my middle sister moved into my same apartment building. And she had my niece and nephew with her. I was always a good aunt. I was always very present with my nieces and nephews. And they moved into my apartment building. And so that's when I'm like, okay, I got to stop with the criminal activity because like my niece and nephew are more important and they're going to be over here a lot. And I can't have something happen when they're here or have these people here. And like, I'm not going to tell my niece and nephew they can't come over. And I just didn't want them to see that side of me. And so I did. I stopped like street life, just kind of like cold turkey, which was, it's actually hard to do that because it's an addiction too,
Yeah.
But
the adrenaline.
Them moving here, I stopped it. Just pulled the plug. I don't want them to see that part of me. I don't want them to see that lifestyle. So I stopped. Mm-hmm. Then with my family moving here, because now my other sister moved here and I have nieces and nephews here, then they start harping on me on like, when are you going to settle down? Because I was still, I'd date guys. I'd have a different guy. I'd have a different honey dip like my mom, They started harping on me like, oh, you need to settle down. You need to settle down. And I didn't feel like I was ready for that. And then I had a big like health scare. Again, like I said, I wasn't very healthy with all the shit I was doing. And I ended up with like, they thought it was cancer. It was like, I went in just for an annual checkup, but I hadn't been in a couple years. It turned into like, okay, you have to come back immediately and do a CAT scan. And we think you probably have cancer. It's a possibility with how your blood work looks and something like that'll just snap you like, oh shit, And so I had the surgery, ended up not being cancer.
Okay, so they went in to see it.
They went in. I ended up having to have an emergency like partial hysterectomy, or I don't remember the name of it. That's what they called it then, but it's a different name. They took half of my, like a tube and an ovary, and it ended up being like a tumor or cyst or something they had to take out. And so recovering from that was a really hard recovery too. My mom came and she stayed with me like a week or two, but once she left, like I was just kind of on my own. My sisters lived here, but they wasn't coming and helping me. And so that was a big, like, maybe I do need a partner. Maybe I do need to settle down because I'm alone, like it was the first time I realized like, oh, I am lonely. Like I'm just stuck in this house and I don't have anyone to help me. My sisters aren't helping me, like my mom's gone. So that was a big change for my whole mentality of like, shit, I'm looking at life or death and I'm realizing how alone I am and
Mm-hmm.
just how my whole life has been a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I guess healing and spending all that time alone. This is when MySpace is becoming a thing.
I loved
I
it.
I get on MySpace and I find one of my exes who he was a good friend. I used to work with him. He was a coworker. He started as a friend, but we ended up dating at a point, and I cut him off because that's what I do. But he was a nice guy. That's partly why I cut him off. He was too nice of a guy. But I found
Mm-hmm.
him on MySpace, and I was just like, oh yay, my old friend Toussaint. Sent him a message. Hey, you remember me? He immediately writes back, hey, yeah, when can I come see you? And he literally came over like, because I sent it on a Friday night. He responded Saturday afternoon. He came over Saturday night to watch a movie with me. And this is when I'm going through my healing and recovery. And from then on, he just came and took care of me. Like literally, it happened just like that. Like he came over that night. It wasn't like he was coming back every day, but like he'd come back every weekend, when he wasn't working, and he'd come or even in the evenings, just when I'm home recovering, he'd come over and just like, I'll come watch a movie with you. He would just come spend time with me when I'm laid up in the house for 6 weeks and can't go anywhere
Mm-hmm.
and can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we bonded pretty quickly over that. And he was just a good guy and a really sweet guy. And at the same time, my mom was now in a marriage. She was in another, well, I don't think they were married yet, but she had been in a relationship for several years at this point with a very nice Indian man named Freddie, who um she knew him through recovery. He was also a counselor, which was weird. They were both alcohol and drug counselors. He
Oh,
was just a
wow,
real
that's
nice
cool.
guy. Yeah, she actually started dating him right before I moved to Dallas, and so I knew him, just didn't know him that well. Um, but when me and Tucson got together, and I had all that shit happen, I just kind of realized how important my mom was and how important, she was to me because she was there to take care of me. And so I started going back to visit her more often too and just be a better daughter for her. And Toussaint would go with me. And, I just started being better for her and going up and seeing her a lot because she lived far away. That's when I started to get to know Freddie better. And he was good to my mom and he was good to me. And he treated me like, I was lovable. And
Mm-hmm.
between him and Toussaint, and then also my job, I have to credit that. I worked in accounting, and my boss at the time, he was super hard on me. But he gave me a promotion, and he ended up telling me, I'm super hard on you because I know what you have in you, Phoebe. Like, I know you're smart, you're very smart, and I know what you can do, and that's why I'm hard on you. That's why I'm harder on you than everyone else. And he kind of just took me under his wing as a mentor. And he was a CFO, and that was what led me into my just staying in accounting and like a full on career in accounting was Jerry. And so it was just weird that when I was 27, all these things happened at once, and it just turned my whole life around. Like these three men showing me love in different ways, and Freddie showing my mom love, and then my nieces and nephews suddenly living here, and I had to like be a good example for them, as best example as I could be. So those are the things that turned me into a different direction. It's just been like a continued growth pattern ever since that happened in when I was 27. That's what it is.
I can say that, we have Code Green Plant. So we've been talking a long time, and the one consistent person besides your mom and your son and your husband is Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
You always, and I started to pick up on that without you telling me your story, but you'd go into stories about him and you would light up when you would talk about him. And, you can just tell
Mm-hmm.
that you needed him too,
Yeah. And we
and
had a really
yeah.
good, and it was really organic. It wasn't forced. Like I said, he'd been with my mom shit 7, 8 years before we really started building a relationship. And it was because we just spent time together and liked each other. And he was a good guy, and he would spoil my mom. And he had his own issues, which probably, helped for us to connect. He wasn't some straight cookie cutter. He was in recovery. He was an addict or recovering addict. He had severe PTSD because he was in Vietnam, and he was like, first cav, he was on the ground. Like he was a grunt, what they called him. And he saw some shit and did some shit. And when I went to college too at this time. Like that's when I started going to college when I was 28. I did papers on him. Like I would do research papers on Vietnam, and so I could learn more about him and talk to him about his experiences because I was just interested in it too. And he taught us a lot about, you know, our native traditions, and because that was stuff we didn't grow up around. And he's full. He was half Seneca Cayuga, half San Juan Pueblo, okay, Owingeh. And so we were very involved in the tribe. He was still part of that. And so my mom loved it. You know, my mom loved it up there with him in Oklahoma. Loved it. And she was there for years, and I loved it. And I would go up, and, you know, it was almost became like a second home to me up there and with everybody. And it was all just, you know, Freddie and his family, and they're just amazing, all of them. I miss them all so much.
What happened to Freddie? So they got married.
They got married eventually.
How long were they together?
Oh, I mean, until he passed away, probably 20 years. He got lung cancer. And he was a smoker. My mom and him were both, you know, cigarette smokers. He got lung cancer, and we weren't sure really if it was from cigarettes or Agent Orange, because that's what he kind of figured he was going to get cancer at some point because he was exposed to so much Agent Orange in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And so he did get it, and he had went into remission eventually, but when he used to jump out of helicopters when he was in Vietnam, and so it messed his back up, and he wouldn't get back surgery. So he's in remission. You know, we'd been going back and forth with this cancer shit. My mom was down visiting for Christmas, and Caleb was just born. Caleb was born at this point, and he loved Caleb so much. Oh my God, Caleb! I gave Caleb his middle name, Isaac. That's Freddie's middle name, because he loved Caleb. Like he used to say, me and Caleb have a connection. Like he used to tell my mom that. And as soon as I found out I was pregnant, he went and bought like a Schwinn tricycle, and like he sent me like baby moccasins, and he was already spoiling Caleb before he got here, man. And he was, you know, like I said, he had a connection with him. He said it himself, but he ended up falling and basically became paralyzed because of his back issues. Cancer came, you know, no longer in remission. Cancer came back. On his death certificate, they actually put that he died of PTSD related symptoms because all this was related to the war, you know. In the end, though, I mean, it's hard to think about, and it was hard to go through, but I'm so glad I did it because I was there with him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I literally saw him. It was crazy how people can end up. I'd never experienced something like that, like how sick he was, because he was on like all these crazy ventilators, and they had him to where he was like unconscious, but he was still moving, so his eyes would be closed and you didn't even know if he could hear you. It was really wild to go through. But like before he got to that point, I remember him like yelling at the nurses at one day when I went up there, and he's holding my hand and he's just yelling to the nurses, "This is my daughter. Do you see my daughter?" Like he was so proud of me too. You know, it was just like, it was very mutual for us. So I was happy to be able to be there with him at the end like that, you know? Mm-hmm. So it meant, you know, we just meant a lot to each other.
He really showed you what a relationship with a father should be.
Yeah. And also a woman, like how he loved my mom. Yeah. He loved my mom. I mean, he was crazy about my mom. You know, he loved her so much. And he used to always say the only woman he'd ever leave her for is Stevie Nicks. But I mean, he just was crazy about my mom.
We're not even done yet. For the audience watching, they saw all this trauma happening to little Phoebe. And then here they see resolution and something positive for you. I didn't want to veer into anything else yet. Like, they need to know good things happen to you. Right. You know what I'm saying? You have so many, and today was like, there was a lot of positives in today, but we're still not to the point where we need to go to yet, which
mental
is mental health. Love you, miss you, bye.
LUMUB podcast.
Love You, Miss You, Bye has been brought to you by Christy Chanelle, LLC. But if you're looking for more information or want to follow us on social media, go check out ChristyChanelle.com. All the podcasts are streamed there, and the YouTube episodes are there. So why not? You can also listen where all podcasts are streamed. This includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And lastly, thank you to you, the one that's listening or watching. I appreciate you so much. Love you, miss you, bye.